Imagine the sun rising over the golden horizon of the desert. The sands dance in the wind while the Nile River flows serenely, as if it were a divine serpent cutting through the land of the pharaohs. It is in this magical and powerful setting that our story begins. But before we talk about the woman who would become an eternal icon, we need to go back in time, back to the year 1370 BC, at the height of Egypt's new kingdom, an era of glory, riches, and secrets whispered between stone columns. Now, before diving into this journey of kingdoms, gods, and crowns, how about leaving your like, commenting on what you love most about the history of Egypt, and subscribing to the channel? This way you help me to continue bringing these stories that make us travel without leaving our place. At the time, Egypt was a superpower in the ancient world, ruled by pharaohs who were seen as living gods. The country controlled vast lands, had fearsome armies, and built temples so large they seemed to touch the sky. It was a deeply religious society, where the people believed that every detail of life, from harvesting to love, was governed by a pantheon of gods, each with their own role, myths, and temples. But even in times of stability, something was about to change. In the midst of this world full of ancient traditions, Nefertiti was born. Her name meant the beautiful one has arrived. Her birth, shrouded in mystery, marked the beginning of a historic turning point. Because this woman would not be just another decorative queen at the side of a king, she would emerge at the center of a revolution that would shake the very foundations of Egypt, politically, spiritually, and culturally. And it all begins when she crosses paths with a visionary pharaoh, a man who wanted to change the very concept of divinity in the country. But who was this man? And why would Nefertiti become so much more than his wife? Egypt's history was about to go off the rails, and it all started when Nefertiti and Akhenaten met. He was still known as Amenhotep IV, a young prince of the royal line, son of the powerful pharaoh Amenhotep III. But there was something different about this young man. His eyes seemed to see the world with a restless gaze, as if he no longer accepted the old rules without question. And then Nefertiti came along. Her name was a promise. The beautiful one has arrived. But she was much more than just beautiful. Intelligent, charismatic, and politically astute, Nefertiti became Akhenaten's main royal wife, and together they formed a couple who would not only rule Egypt, but attempt to rebuild it from the ground up. In most royal marriages in ancient Egypt, the wife took a back seat. Beautiful, yes, but silent, obedient, limited to motherhood and worship of the gods. But Nefertiti broke that mold. From the beginning, she was by Akhenaten's side in everything, in ceremonies, in decisions, in public appearances. The images of the two carved in the temples left no doubt. She was treated as an equal, and at times she even seemed to lead with more presence than the king himself. Together, they began one of the most daring projects in Egyptian history, to redefine the country's entire religion, casting aside the old gods and exalting only Aton, the solar disk, a spiritual revolution that would cause conflict, resistance, and many enemies. Nefertiti's power only grew. She was not a shadow of her husband, she was her own light. And this brings us to a crucial moment, when the two begin a movement that shakes the foundations of ancient Egypt. Imagine an empire that for centuries worshipped dozens of gods, Osiris, Isis, Horus, Ra, each with their own temples, their own priests, their own stories. These gods were not just sacred figures, they were deeply embedded in people's daily lives, from birth to the afterlife. Now imagine that a royal couple, Akhenaten and Nefertiti, decide to put an end to all that. That's exactly what happened. Inspired by a faith that still raises debates among scholars today, Nefertiti and her husband began the greatest spiritual revolution in Egyptian history, the exclusive worship of the god Aton, represented as a solar disk with rays ending in hands. For them, Aton was the only true god, and all others should be forgotten. This was not just religion. It was a change in the country's political, economic, and cultural system. Entire temples were closed or destroyed. The names of the ancient gods began to be erased from the inscriptions. The priests of Thebes, who had held almost equal power to the pharaoh, lost their influence almost overnight. It was an invisible, silent earthquake, but devastating.
And Nefertiti.
She was not merely a supporter of this idea. In sculptures and murals, we see her worshipping Aten with fervor, leading rituals, and being represented as a bridge between mortals and the sun god. It was as if she too was a divine figure, an intermediary of light. But of course, by challenging centuries of belief, Nefertiti and Akhenaten not only gained followers, they amassed dangerous enemies. Priests, generals, nobles, all were silent, watching, waiting for weakness. The most impressive thing, instead of retreating, the couple went even further. They decided to found a new city, dedicated exclusively to the god Aten, far from Thebes, far from the ancient temples, far from the past. Along with Akhenaten, Nefertiti went down in history as one of the first defenders of monotheism. The idea that there is only one true god. At the time, this was almost unimaginable. In the ancient world, all great civilizations were polytheistic. Having dozens, even hundreds of gods was the norm. But Nefertiti dared to walk a different path. She and her husband believed that Aten was not just the main god, he was the only god, the source of all life, the light that warmed, the one who made plants grow, the one who guided the cycle of day and night. Everything came from him. This radical belief was not just a spiritual decision, it altered the balance of power in Egypt. By eliminating the worship of other gods, especially the powerful god Amun, Nefertiti, and Akhenaten weakened the influence of the priests, who had wealth and influence comparable to that of the royal family. Nefertiti came to be seen not only as a queen, but as the supreme priestess of Aten. In many depictions, she is shown directly worshipping the solar disk, together with her daughters, in intimate and solemn rituals. She was at once devout and divine, a living symbol of the new faith. The most impressive thing is that all of this happened more than 1300 years before religions like Christianity or Islam emerged. In other words, Nefertiti and Akhenaten were centuries ahead of their time, challenging the norms of the ancient world with an idea that would only become commonplace much later. But this boldness came at a price. The Egyptian elite was increasingly uneasy. The people felt pressure to abandon the old gods. And all the while, Nefertiti became increasingly present and powerful at the king's side. In ancient Egypt, even great queens usually appeared at the side or behind the pharaoh. They were there to support him, provide heirs, and maintain sacred household rituals. But with Nefertiti, it was a different story. She completely broke that pattern. Artistic representations of this period show something unprecedented. Nefertiti, the same height as Akhenaten, wearing the same royal robes, the tall blue crown, normally reserved for pharaohs, and most symbolically of all, participating in scenes of government and war. In some murals, she even appears striking down Egypt's enemies, a gesture of dominance that had previously been exclusive to kings. This showed the people that she was not just a companion, she was power. During public ceremonies, Nefertiti did not stand in the background. She shared the throne, participated in rituals, and was called the Great Royal Wife, a title that signified more than status. She was an advisor, a strategist, a mediator between the god Aten and humans. She was, in fact, a co-regent. And it wasn't just a matter of appearance. Many scholars believe that Nefertiti made important decisions, helped administer the new holy city, which we will talk about shortly, and had a direct influence on political and religious changes. The impression one gets from studying the records of this time is that for a time, Egypt had two equally influential rulers, a man and a woman, guiding the country into a new era. But what would it be like to live in this new capital, created from scratch by this revolutionary couple? What did Nefertiti help to build with her own hands? Over time, Nefertiti stopped being just a reflection of the king. She began to act, look, and command like a true sovereign. At many times, it was not possible to tell who was actually leading, Akhenaten or Nefertiti. Within the new city they founded, called Akhetaten, now known as Amarna, she had a presence in all aspects of government, politics, religion, culture, and even military affairs. And do you know what's most incredible? There are records in which Nefertiti's name appears alone, without Akhetaten's, in contexts of maximum authority. This suggests that she was already acting independently, with decision-making power. Some historians believe that she may have assumed the position of co-regent official, which in Egypt meant that she shared the throne equally with the pharaoh. Others believe that she became pharaoh in her own right later on, under another name. But even without this confirmation, what is clear is that the people saw her as a figure of command. She was the voice of Aten, she was the face of the new Egypt, and she was feared and respected as a true monarch. This rise did not happen out of nowhere. It was built on charisma, political intelligence, and a very strong public image. Every sculpture, every mural, every temple reinforced the idea that Nefertiti was much more than a royal consort. She was a living authority. But for a new faith and a new kingdom to thrive, more was needed than just decrees and public appearances. It was necessary to create a physical place, a new world where everything revolved around Aten. Imagine an empty desert, no temples, no houses, just sand and sun as far as the eye can see. Now imagine that right there in the middle of nowhere, Nefertiti and Akhenaten decide to build a new capital for Egypt, from scratch, dedicated exclusively to a single god, Aten. This is how Akhetaton, known today as Amarna, was born, a city completely different from anything Egypt had ever seen, and Nefertiti was essential in the creation of this city. The temples did not have closed roofs like the ancient ones, because the god Aton needed to see and touch everything with his light. The architecture was open to the sky, bright, full of windows, sculptures of the sun, and representations of the royal couple offering flowers, bread and wine to the solar disk. The artistic style also changed, more human, more intimate, more realistic. It showed scenes from the daily life of the royal family with a naturalness that would have been unthinkable before. And Nefertiti, she was everywhere, carved into temple facades, on thrones, in murals, leading worship, standing with her daughters with the sun of Aten shining down upon her. The city seemed to breathe through her image, a mixture of beauty, faith, and power. Amarna was a great political and religious experiment, and Nefertiti was the soul of that city. It was there that she could exercise her power without interference from the old priests. There she was more than a queen. She was the symbol and center of a new era. Amarna's sun would not shine forever. What began as a golden dream would soon face dark winds, internal conflict, opposition from the traditional clergy, and rumors of instability. And in the midst of it all, Nefertiti disappears from the record. Even after mysteriously disappearing from official records, Nefertiti has never been forgotten, and one of the main reasons for this is not in an ancient text. It is in a sculpture, which to this day is considered one of the most impressive works of art in humanity. We are talking about the bust of Nefertiti, discovered in 1912 by a team of German archaeologists. It was hidden in Amarna, intact, and over 3,000 years old. And when it was revealed to the world, it caused a shock. The bust showed a woman with delicate features, an elongated neck, a symmetrical face, and a calm, almost ethereal expression. The characteristic blue crown, the gaze fixed on the horizon, everything about that sculpture seemed to say, this woman was special. The bust has become a global icon, a symbol of timeless beauty. Today it is on display at the Berlin Museum, attracting millions of visitors every year. It is not just an aesthetic portrait, it is a powerful message, a way of immortalizing Nefertiti's presence even when all the documents seem to want to erase it. But this focus on beauty often makes people forget. She was remembered not just for her looks, but for what she represented. The bust is beautiful, yes, but it is also the portrait of a woman who ruled, dared, challenged, and changed history. Her image has stood the test of time because her influence was profound. And precisely because of this symbolic force, the sudden disappearance of Nefertiti generates to this day one of the biggest questions in Egyptian archaeology. Nefertiti was everywhere, on the walls of temples, in the rituals of Aten, in the palaces of Amarna. And then she disappeared. Just like that. From one moment to the next, her name disappeared from the official records, as if someone had deliberately erased her existence. But why? This silence has become one of the greatest mysteries in Egyptian history. There are several theories and no definitive answers. Some scholars believe that she died suddenly, perhaps from illness or complications during childbirth. Others suggest that she lost her power, was removed by her own allies, or was replaced by another queen. There are even hypotheses that she was murdered by forces that wanted to restore the old gods and destroy everything that she and Akhenaten had built. But there is an even more fascinating theory, that Nefertiti, she did not disappear, she just changed her name. Many Egyptologists believe that after Akhenaten's death, she may have assumed the throne as pharaoh under the name Neferneferu. This would explain the sudden disappearance of the name Nefertiti, at the same time that a female figure appears in the records who rules alone for a short period. The thing is, this piece of history is broken. Some documents were destroyed, others rewritten by later pharaohs who hated the cult of Aten and tried to erase everything that came from Amarna. What's left are fragments and unanswered questions. But even with this emptiness, the figure of Nefertiti has not been forgotten. In fact, it has become even more powerful precisely because of this mystery. Nefertiti's disappearance from official records, a question that has echoed for centuries, arises. Where is this queen's body? Ancient Egypt was obsessed with death and the afterlife. Pharaohs and queens were buried with pomp in lavish tombs, with inscriptions recounting their conquests, curses to ward off looters, and maps to guide their souls to the afterlife. But in the case of Nefertiti, no tomb has been confirmed as hers to this day. And this generated an avalanche of theories. Some believe that she was originally buried at Amarna, but that her tomb was destroyed or looted when the cult of Aten was extinguished. Others believe that if she did indeed become pharaoh under the name Neferneferuaten, her tomb may have been used by another ruler later. erasing all traces of her existence. But the most intriguing theory has emerged in recent years that Nefertiti may be hiding inside Tutankhamun's tomb. Yes, that famous tomb, discovered in 1922 by Howard Carter. Radar and thermal imaging studies suggest that there may be hidden chambers behind the tomb's walls, and some archaeologists believe that these chambers may contain the remains of Nefertiti, hidden there to protect her from the wrath of those who hated the religion of Aten. Nothing has been confirmed to date. No mummy has been officially identified as Nefertiti, and this has only increased the fascination surrounding her, a queen so present in life, but so absent in death. Tutankhamun, a name that almost everyone knows, even if they don't know exactly why. The boy pharaoh, crowned as a child, with a tomb so well preserved that it has become an icon of world archaeology. But the big question behind his throne is, who was his mother? And that's where Nefertiti comes in once again. For a long time it was believed that Tutankhamun was the son of Akhenaten, which seems quite likely. But as for his mother, the debate has never been settled. Some Egyptologists argue that Nefertiti was his stepmother, not his biological mother. Others, based on royal titles and genetic clues from mummies found, suggest that she could in fact be Tutankhamun's mother, which would give her even more importance in Egypt's line of succession. There is a theory that has grown stronger over time. Nefertiti. She is said to have been the main wife of Akhenaten and the legitimate mother of Tutankhamun, but to protect him from the enemies of the cult of Akhenaten, her name was erased from the inscriptions. After all, when the old religion returned to power, everything connected with the Amarna period was treated as heresy, including the name of Nefertiti. Other scholars believe that Tutankhamun's mother was a minor princess called the Young Lady, whose mummy was found in a hidden tomb. But to this day there is no official identification, and Nefertiti's shadow hovers over this doubt like a silent but powerful presence. If she is indeed Tutankhamun's mother, it completely changes the way we view the end of Akhenaten's reign and the transition to the return of the old religion. It means that Nefertiti remained influential even after the fall of Amarna, guiding the heir and perhaps even protecting his son's legacy behind the scenes. In ancient Egypt, roles were well defined. Men ruled, fought, and made decisions. Women, even queens, had their place limited to the family, the court, and domestic rituals. But Nefertiti did not accept this silent rule. She broke the limits with elegance and with strength. Amarna period, we see some astonishing scenes. Nefertiti is shown pummeling Egypt's enemies with a royal scepter, in a warlike stance, something reserved almost exclusively for pharaohs. In other images, she conducts religious rituals alone, with her daughters at her side, and with the sun disk Aten casting its rays directly upon her. There is no pharaoh in the scene, only she. She also wore insignia of masculine power, such as the blue crown of war and the false goatee of the pharaohs. This was not just a symbol, it was a message. Nefertiti was telling the world that there was no role in Egypt that she could not play. And that was revolutionary. She was one of the rare women in Egyptian history who took on traditionally male roles without giving up her feminine identity. She was a mother, a wife, a ruler, and a warrior. She was a priestess and a strategist, all at the same time. This behavior was not common. Hatshepsut, another great female pharaoh who lived before Nefertiti, had to masculinize herself completely in order to be accepted as a ruler. Nefertiti, on the other hand, maintained her strong feminine image, and yet demanded and received the respect of a king. She was, in many ways, an unprecedented model of leadership, a type of power that inspired not through fear, but through intelligence, magnetism, and a firm stance in the face of an entire empire. Nefertiti's remains as if searching for a golden needle in a desert of stone. But in 1898, in the Valley of the Kings, a quiet discovery rekindled hope, a tomb known as KV-35. Inside, 3 mummies, 2 identified, and 1, to this day, unnamed. She became known as the Young Lady. And that's when one of the biggest controversies in modern Egyptology began. This female mummy, approximately 35 years old at the time of her death, has noble features, an elongated skull, a feature present in several representations of Akhenaten's family, and signs of having suffered a trauma to the head, perhaps the cause of death. She was poorly preserved, partially damaged, which made identification difficult. But experts noticed something. She has strong genetic similarities to Tutankhamun. In fact, DNA tests revealed that the Young Lady was the mother of the young pharaoh. This caused quite a stir. If Nefertiti was indeed Tutankhamun's mother, and if this mummy is his mother, then this could be Nefertiti's mummy. But there is a problem. No inscription confirms this identity. no direct clue that says, this is Nefertiti. Only indirect evidence, fragments, and a lot of speculation. Some scholars believe that this mummy belongs to a sister of Nefertiti, or a secondary wife of Akhenaten. Still others maintain that Nefertiti was never buried there, and that her tomb remains hidden, perhaps behind secret walls, as in the tomb of Tutankhamun, as we have discussed before. But the mystery remains, and the simple fact that we are still debating his possible mummy shows how big his presence was, even after 3,300 years. Even with so many mysteries surrounding her, or perhaps because of them, Nefertiti never disappeared from history. On the contrary, she became something even greater than an Egyptian queen. Today, she is a universal symbol of female power, a figure who inspires not only scholars but artists, leaders, writers, filmmakers, and women all over the world. Her image is powerful because it carries unique contrasts: strength and beauty, sweetness and authority, motherhood and leadership. She showed that a woman could govern, decide, command armies, face priests, and still be revered as a goddess of beauty and life. She did not need to erase herself as a woman to be respected as a leader. That in itself was already a revolution. In ancient times and even today in many places, this is still a rare thing. Nefertiti represents the woman who steps into spaces that have historically been denied to her. The woman who thinks strategically, who builds empires, who chooses a different path even when the entire world says no. And what's more, she did all of this during one of the most conservative and religious times in Egyptian history. She defied gods, traditions, and time itself. And perhaps that is why, thousands of years later, we continue to look at her face, in the bust on display in Berlin, in modern paintings, in books, tattoos, fashion collections, series, and even in songs, and see not only the past, but the strength of the present. More than 3,000 years have passed since Nefertiti lived. But even today, in the 21st century, her name and image live on, more than ever. Her bust, found in Amarna and currently on display in Berlin, is not just an archaeological piece. It has become a symbol of elegance, mystery, strength, and beauty. What's more, it has become a brand. Fashion designers create collections inspired by Nefertiti's face. Designers include her in jewelry, clothing, paintings, and even tattoos. Pop singers, actresses, and content creators have used her figure as a reference to express female power, ancestry, and royalty. She appears in documentaries, series, fiction, and non-fiction books. Her life is discussed in classrooms, podcasts, and videos like this one, because Nefertiti, she is not just a historical character, she has become a universal symbol. And this didn't happen by chance. Nefertiti represents the most modern of ancient figures. She was political, spiritual, maternal, steadfast, and strategic. She did not simply walk alongside power, she was power itself. Her image has survived destruction, silence, and erasure, and yet she has shone even brighter. Today, in a time when the history of great women is being reclaimed, Nefertiti occupies the place that has always been hers, at the center, not just as the wife of a pharaoh or a pretty face in a sculpture, but as a leader, a visionary, and a timeless symbol of feminine strength. And perhaps that is what makes her so fascinating to this day. Because while many rulers have been forgotten, Nefertiti remains, between mystery and memory, between history and myth. If you've made it this far, tell me, what part of Nefertiti's story surprised you the most? Leave your comment below, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to continue traveling with me through the universe of queens and empires that shaped the world. See you in the next story, see you then.